Video. Yeah, hello everybody. My name's Scott Alexander. Welcome to the MII TED Talk Club. We've just been watching Jochen Wagner. What happened when we paired up thousands of strangers to talk politics was the video, and we're going to see if there are any parallels between that and what the content of that video and mediation. We have a panel today, and I'm going to introduce them individually, if that's okay. And then once I've chatted to them for a bit, if you want to come in or you want to drop some questions into the chat, do that and we'll go where we go through. So, yeah, this video was all about bringing thousands of Europeans together who had diverse views. They answered a questionnaire, and if they answered things differently, the algorithm put them together, and they had fantastic talks. So our first person on the panel that I'm going to come to is Ilona Kuplik. She left her home country of Germany, coincidentally, she didn't pick this video, coincidentally, with her family in 2011 to live in the southwest of France. In 2016, they lived in Ireland for a year, where she discovered her love for our Ireland and its people. Since 2019, she's been on the panel of mediators of family mediation NI in Belfast and an Emin registered international elder mediator. She's also CEDAR accredited and a member of the Association of European Mediators in Paris. And she's just climbed Kilimanjaro as well. Ilona, the first question that we ask everybody on the panel is pretty much the same one, which is give us 1 point, if you like, or one lesson that you took from the video, and how might that takeaway contained within the video be used by the people on this call, mediators?
Yeah, thank you very much for this introduction. I could show you my certificate, but I don't. You have to believe me that I was up there. It's here, actually. I think one of the most important things is connected to one of the principles of our mediation process is voluntary. So that people are coming together freely and they want to be there and they are not forced. And if we have, and we really keep this in mind, that the people they should want to be there in the mediation, then obviously they can have a discussion, as in the video showed. No? So people came together, although they knew that they will meet someone who is not the same, does not have the same opinion, and still they wanted to be there, and then they have a discussion, and then they might be changing their mind. So that's one point.
Okay, so there we go. 1 point, which is it's voluntary. Forcing people into it doesn't really work for mediation. Certainly wouldn't have worked for this one. We also have Avril Sheridan. Avril Sheridan is a former litigation solicitor of 22 years experience. That might have been written last year. It might be 23 now. Who has seen the light and is now a full-time mediator with particular expertise in the area of separating couples. With a focus on client-centric solutions, Avril is proud to offer her expertise in navigating complex family dynamics. Her background equips her to guide you through the intricacies of conflict resolution, ensuring a swift and effective path forward. And this month, Avril was named the most professional mediator in South Dublin by the EU Business News Irish Enterprise Awards. So congratulations, Avril. Again, same question. Give us a point from the video that you can take away and use.
Well, for me, this was a very different process to a mediation process, but it does show that you have to be very conscious in the mediation process, because ours are limited to a short period of time to have discussions. So you've got to be conscious about, even despite the shortness of time, you have to stand back at times and just let things flow between the parties, because they can make so much more progress without you maybe reframing, asking questions. That only is needed sometimes. It's not always needed. So to be conscious of when it's needed and when it's not.
Okay.
So that's what I took from it. Yeah.
Well, it's very good. So this was a conversations, thousands of them taking place across Europe between two strangers. And I suppose the lesson is that, albeit we are mediating with people who know each other, sometimes it's just let them at it. Just let them go and stand back and watch the magic that you have.
It's amazing.
Okay, our third panelist today is Bob. Bob Creehey is an MII Council member. Following a career in corporate and project recovery roles, Bob Creehey now practices as a mediator and dispute negotiator. Bob's both CEDAR and MII accredited and has been assisting clients resolve contractual performance and technical disputes in the major programme and project management space for the last 20 years. He acts primarily in the commercial, workplace, family and civil sectors with a focus on small and medium enterprises, family-owned businesses, partnerships and individuals. So again, Bob, give us one big thing that you took away from here.
I suppose reassurance. I think we live in such a divided time. Everything is divisive. The algorithms that drive us, everything, we are channeled into silos. And once you're in those silos, breaking out of those silos can actually be very difficult. So I just thought the whole initiative was hugely reassuring. The idea that it started off quite organically, but was then picked up and has become slightly more systemized was reassuring, because we do, and I don't want to get into politics unless you want to, and then I'll argue with you. It's challenging times, and actually understanding where we are coming from and where do you find the opportunity? Where do you genuinely find the opportunity to take a breath and to genuinely listen to someone else? And he hinted that actually the success was the fact that they were able to do that one-to-one without anyone else there. Because of course, the minute you go into those silos are also echo chambers where you hear reassuring things. Why are they reassuring? Because they tell you that you're right. So when did we last genuinely sit down, take a deep breath and say, I'm going to listen with the anticipation that I'm going to be wrong? I can't remember. So yeah, so reassuring.
Reassurance if you can put people together. Can I stay with you, Bob, just for the moment and following on from that, okay? Why is not a word that we use very often in mediation, but I'm going to use it anyway. Why do people need mediators if everyone in the experiment met without a third party being there and just having their one-to-one? And 90% of them, in fact, probably 98% of them, enjoyed it. So how come they enjoyed it so much and we weren't there?
Yeah, gosh, like who needs mediators? Like who would have thought mediators? What do they know? Well, of course, there's a huge difference, because as mediators, we are there to facilitate normally two parties, two individuals who find themselves in difficult situations. So I would say there are two reasons why you can't get rid of us mediators just yet. And first of all, every single person, all 12,000 who participated, did so on a voluntary basis. Now, of course, all of our participants are volunteers. However, these people put themselves effectively into harm's way. They said, I'm going to come, I'm going to turn up, I'm going to listen, I'm going to participate. And the fact that they self-facilitated themselves over quite an extensive period of time is very different. And the second bit is, even though they may have been holding really, really deeply ingrained beliefs, what was the ultimate skin in the game? The ultimate skin in the game is my political party, my football team, my gender identification, etc., etc. So the skin in the game for our clients is quite often much more personal and really quite dramatic for them. So yeah, I think we've got a day or two yet left as mediators. So.
Okay, and coming back to Avril, I think this time, I'll just keep going backwards and forwards until we run out of questions. The meetings were held in private, although some parties chose to use pictures of the meetings afterwards in that video there. Might privacy and confidentiality be important factors in achieving the positive outcomes, Avril?
Oh, I think in this case, exactly in line with mediation, was absolutely critical that they were private and that it wasn't going to be discussed with other parties. You can see some of the conclusions that they came to, or some of them changed their views. That wouldn't have happened if the discussions weren't held in private.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm probably the only one on the panel who actually watches Maths, right, which is Married at First Sight Australia.
Oh, right.
But if
I can confirm that from my point of view, Scott.
yeah, that's okay. Well, I think it's fantastic. But they have this thing called the commitment ceremony, right, where they bring all the couples together and they get quizzed by coaches, but they get quizzed in public with all the other couples there
Oh,
and together with the two parties there. And I was watching it last night thinking, Chippers, you would never ask that question in a joint session. You just couldn't get away with, do you love the person and all this kind of stuff, you know? Is it just that you're not that much into her, you know, and stuff like that was coming out in public. So you can't do, so the fact that you've got those two people who have volunteered, now then guaranteed that the only ones now in mediation, there's going to be another confidential party there, just make sure it's okay. But within there, I'm not sure that this process would have worked if they hadn't been guaranteed there's only two of you going to be there. Does that make sense? Is that what you would say as well, Avril?
yeah, no, I don't think it could possibly have worked.
Okay.
Although, it's different to the mediation process. They're not giving up anything. They're not kind of trying to kind of negotiate. They're not negotiating their positions because, as Bob said, they don't have anything in the game. These are just opinions. And so what if they don't change the other person's opinion? It isn't really that critical.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's the difference. It's a big difference. Yeah.
It's a big difference. Still help. We've still got to try and get them into
Oh,
the,
yeah.
into
Yeah.
those one-to-one discussions and out of their little echo chambers online. But can I bring in Alona as well? The meetings were organised by location, and I suppose that was to keep down expense. And they tried to match people who generally live fairly close to one another. And presumably spoke at least one common language if there's only two there, Alona. So how important is it that there are touch points or similarities are drawn out in mediation? And indeed, how might a mediator help that? Had you been there with those conversations about drawing them out? I'll pass that on to Alona.
Okay, so just to make sure, so why they have chosen the people they were living close together, I want to say. So I think, as you said already, practicalities, at least at the first meeting, so when it was only in Germany.
Yes, but those people would then have touch points because they could talk about the area, they could talk about where they were, they would have things in common. They weren't coming there blind and not knowing anything about each other. So it's just the importance of drawing out similarities or touch points within a mediation that might also be useful and might help this process.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's the when we are looking for common ground, actually. So that's the and I think there's one point when he talks, that's a very early start on the video. It's at about 2 minutes. It's about the bubbles when we said that the people are coming. And Sharon, I absolutely agree with you. So they come with their opinion and there's not so much at stake, maybe less at stake than people coming into our mediation sessions. But they come with everything they have, with a little backpack, with everything, with the souci in French, so the things, the doubts, the scare, the fear, so the money, the financial background, everything, the education, whatever they are, so a product of everything. And they come in our mediation, and then we try to match them in a certain way, or at least find some common ground so that we can say, okay, listen, I heard this, you said this, and then we try to find where it's overlapping, actually. And it's funny because when you say that they were living very close to each other and they had some common ground, but we are talking, I'm working with families, so they have a family as a common ground already. And still they are fighting over money and things. So it's interesting that even though they are so close and they have so much together, kids and so on, and still they come to mediation, but because they need obviously someone to facilitate their conversation and their discussion and their decisions. So although they have a lot of common ground and so much not common ground, but so much in common, then it's still that we are needed. I think we are needed to help them. And if you compare that to what they had, as I said, there's not so much risk at stake because it's only in the political opinion, but the only is massive at the moment, and it's becoming
Yeah.
bigger and bigger. And when you just look at the US, I think there are a lot of people who didn't talk to each other anymore, although they were neighbor, friends, and colleagues, and so on. So it is really on the bigger scale, and politics is so important nowadays, or it's getting even more important nowadays, so that even in families, it's sometimes difficult to talk about politics. And yeah, so I lost a little bit the track what I wanted to say, but anyway, it's good.
That's okay. It was all about drawing out similarities and such like. But you collect your thoughts on it back to Bob. Bob, I know that we mentioned in the pre-meet, we have our own pre-meets, folks, you know what I mean? This isn't just thrown together. You mentioned a certain Mr. Venn, but we'll come back to that if you want to bring it in now. But these meetings, when I picked up, it was, we put strangers together. They weren't really that random. They had some kind of construct. They had a questionnaire. They were set up by media organizations. They matched opposing parties. They knew what was happening. So maybe just discuss the importance of structure, because it's not just that you throw a mediator in there. There's structure, there's process, there's various questions that we'd use, and the likelihood of a positive outcome in when there is a lot of skin in the game, when there is a lot at stake here. Could you maybe discuss that, Bob?
Yeah, I think like it obviously they did take quite a structured approach to it, which they needed to, because they ultimately they have a duty of care to these people because they're putting them in difficult positions. Um, but how do you negotiate? How do you have those discussions? So because I've got two phrases like division by design. Today a lot of systems are designed to be divisive. A lot of a lot of the new media, a lot of the structures, they are designed to be divisive. If we look at many of our parliamentary systems, they're adversarial. So these things are designed. So let's play by our own rules, and let's design, hopefully, these mediation and discussions. I came up with a phrase recently, which a lot of people responded quite differently to, and I came up with this phrase called speed hating, because we've had speed dating for a long time. But if you go onto a lot of social media, it's speed hating. I can say the vilest things to you and then disappear. So I've just speed hated you, and you can't get back at me. I can go bleh, and off I go, or I just disappear, or I'll come back. But I control. What would I dare do that in person with another? With even if I was totally opposed to their views. So how you negotiate, and because when cats fight with each other, they do so with their claws in until it gets really serious. And I've been watching Jane negotiating with her cat and losing the negotiation. As you can probably see, if anyone can see Jane at the moment, the cat has reappeared. So my message is don't negotiate with a cat, you'll lose. So yeah, I'll leave you with that. Sorry, Jane.
Well, there we go. We never got the Venn. We'll get
We'll get
Venn.
Ven. I'll bring Ven back in a second.
There's a couple of questions. I'll throw this open to anyone. It's interesting. This is from Jane. That part of the process includes a requirement that no one else is listening. What then is the rest of the process? And I suspect, although it wasn't part of the video, that the organisers said these are the rules. Don't thump anyone and whatever, but just engage and have a talk and see where it goes. Largely, but there may have been some kind of structures around it. And then they fed back and they were given the option whether to post a picture or a video or whatever else they have, which is why you end up with the ones. I think it's in there. But then there's an interesting one from Adrian there. Could you define the difference between opinion and belief systems? Anyone want to take that one up? He says, I'm only the chair. I don't have to.
I think it's such a pertinent question, because you may feel I'm expressing an opinion, but if I have a deeply held belief system, that's really, really important to me. And it goes really to the core of who I am. My question in mediation would be, that's fine, but does that still serve you? So does that belief system still serve you? Or are you entrapped by it? Now, I'd need to be careful how I position that, because even questioning, even bringing someone's belief system into the room is risky, and throwing it back is that our role? Is it our right? Is it our purpose? and how dare we. So you need to tread very carefully, because I can have, opinions about something as I'm expressing opinions now. Where are those coming from, and do they still serve me? If you spend a day with me and we go backwards and forwards over many cups of coffee or mint teas or whatever your poison is, perhaps we have that opportunity, but we need to tread carefully. It's a cracking question because, because my opinion may be your belief system may just be my opinion, or the other way around.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a continuum. Avril, did you want to come in there?
No, I think it's a very good point. Like obviously in mediation, I don't think we go near anything like belief systems. I think we're inclined to paddle around looking for the middle ground. Well, what do you think might work? What'll work here? You know, so we're splashing around in the middle a lot of the time. So, you know, it isn't about belief systems or opinions, because we're trying to get a middle ground, because the opinions are so far apart sometimes.
Yes, Adrian's saying belief systems drive behavior. So
Yeah.
presumably you've got some kind of paradigm fixed here. I'll maybe bring in Adrian actually, if you want to have a chat with the panel. But if I'm picking you up right, you've got a way of looking at things because that's deeply held. That's part of your belief system. So I had a case with a guy who he got into trouble at work because he called his colleagues names and then he started doing a couple of things. And he said, well, the reason is that she slagged me and my dad brought me up to always hit back, always defend yourself. That was his belief system. And I'm thinking, you're not at school, right? Come on. But I didn't say that. And I almost regret it now, because it was fundamental. It was more like I should have used the old Batna and Malatna and Watna and whatever. And what do you think is going to happen if you don't, sort this? And what happened was he ended up getting sacked. Right. So I suppose these belief systems, as Bob says, they don't always serve you as well. And to some extent, and it would be presumably a one-to-one that you would only ever use it, there is this element of gently challenging and saying, is this still working? Is it still serving you? I don't
Yeah, Scott, you can do that gently to April's point, because your belief system, it may drive your behavior, but if you don't wish to be enslaved to it, I'd be more interested about what it does for your patterns of relating, because your belief system will drive your patterns of relating. So that the example you've just given, well, my dad used to do that, or that's how it worked, or I had a previous boss. These things inform you, your patterns of relating. And we then, the part of our mastery and the artistry of mediation is identifying and hopefully validating those underlying challenges, but then gently bringing them into the room in a rather oblique way. So that's very different to the head-to-head that we've just witnessed, where putting two people with opposing, because again, you're not going to get. We keep talking about the skin in the game. Ultimately, we have a care that we need to exercise for our clients.
Okay, Adrian, do you want to come in? Do you want to take yourself off?
Yeah, just I'm doing farm succession planning and family business succession planning, and one case there recently, there were three generations. We do the genogram back a while, and you explore the relationships between the different generations, and there were disputes right through the three generations, and it actually filtered down to the current one. So lived behavior creates the patterns, which create the belief systems, and when they actually see that written in front of them, sometimes you get this aha moment, and when you see, what we try and stress then is, do you want that to carry on to the next generation? Because we have an onus on ourselves as parents in general, not to pass on our crap to the next generation, to deal with our issues, and not to make it generational. So that's just it. And the other thing is, when we're in the mediation, you're only literally getting a snapshot of what's happening, unless you take the context into consideration as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Adrian. That's very useful. Ilona, when we bring you back in, I don't know if there's any you want to make any comments on what you've heard or in there, but I mean, I'm looking at this interest beyond self that Adrian's brought up there. The concern that people might have for the generations coming after them, type of stuff, but also this whole thing about belief and then, oh, jeepers. Right, I have been crap, to use his word. Any words from you, Ilona?
Yeah, I just thought whatever you, all the four of you, you mentioned something without saying the word, and I think it's taking risk. So, and it's also related to the video because he said, well, we had a problem, but I just thought we're bringing two people who are strangers together, as we do sometimes, estranged families, estranged members, estranged people, estranged husband or ex-husband and ex-wife together. There's this risk momentum, and when we talk. When you say, I will be in the middle between beliefs and opinions, and we try to navigate through this, and there are two opposites, I think sometimes it's interesting to knock on the risk as well. And that's exactly what you said, Adrian, then to maybe to ask, okay, what did not happen, what was not good in your generation, and this may be going on if we just give it in the succession, and the people have to deal then in the new generation has to deal with it, something which is risky. And it's saying it, naming it, and even though it's challenging, and what I sometimes do then, okay, this might sound challenging, and then I really put my finger on it. Maybe it's my mentality being German as well, and a bit direct, and maybe sometimes a bit rude, but well, I try to be not as a mediator, but still because it's in the interest of me really to understand what is the problem behind the problem. And in succession, it's really interesting not to give it from one generation to the other. So, but if the new generation doesn't know what the real problem is, then it will underlying going on. And so risk is the thing which I sometimes I try not to avoid it in the mediation. I try sometimes to name it and really put my finger on it. And the risk that he saw there with the ex-murderer, you never know, and that's exactly what can happen in the mediation as well, because there is a risk putting two people with you into the room, or more people. If it's a succession, there will be multi-parties and families, and you just don't know how they get on at home, no? And you don't know how they get on when you leave them out of the session. So you just hope that parents are not calling each other or name calling each other afterwards, no? So, and saying nasty things to each other. So we only see them in a snap of a time when we have them in joint session, and it's sometimes we have to take the risk, I think, to put them together, even if there's violence and so on. And I think there's things you can put into place to make it kind of safe, at least for the time before, during the mediation, and also afterwards. But the risk is can help, and risk is momentum. Risk is also power, and yeah. So I think they took a risk because they did not know how the people are when they put them together. No? So there could have been really like violence or so, no? And that sometimes we take the risk as well, and we should be open to that.
Okay, so I'm going to be taking Bob, and indeed Avril and I, we're all in the same sharing and learning group. And we were discussing things like that last night, maintaining confidentiality, but we were chatting about when to use risk, but also how to minimize it. And I think certainly I work in workplace mediation, so I do a lot of work now in pre-meetings and assessing whether it's going to be too risky to put them together. But there are times when I'll say, you know what, they really need to see the impact that they've been having on one another. So, Bob, do you want to come in chatting about risk and, mediator sometimes having to weigh the things up and hopefully come on the right side?
Right, so Joachim and Ilona have opened up a new fear for me, a new risk, which is axe murderers. I'm quite concerned now that the European continent is awash with, and I'd love to know what the statistics are. But actually, joking aside, everyone who comes into mediation, like mediation, is a huge risk. It's a risk for everyone. because if you litigate, litigation is actually, other than your pocket and ultimately winning or losing in an adversarial competition, it can be relatively risk-free because you've now outsourced the risk to professionals and they'll be doing the toing and froing. Whereas in mediation, I had the privilege of doing an information and assessment meeting with a potential client this morning. And one thing that came quite clear to me was that concern about, yeah, this is risky because you're taking two people who have a ruptured experience and you bring them together. So that risk assessment, that risk management, our attention to it at every single point, and what can we do to mitigate that? Because we'll never eradicate it, and how we mitigate it. So yeah, that's our game. That's in our wheelhouse. And actually, one of my colleagues who's on the call today, Davina, she coached me and prepared me for a shuttle mediation and gave me some excellent tools on how you manage that risk in a difficult, potentially difficult mediation. And that's invaluable. So having colleagues who are willing to share with you and all of us as a collective to understand risk, how we manage it, and how we exercise it, and how we live with it, because risk equals sometimes it will go wrong. So
Or it can bring big rewards. But Avril, I'll maybe bring you in there. I mean, Paul's been chatting effectively about the courage that people have to show to come in and take control of their own issues and their own problems within mediation. They're the ones that are taking the big risk because they're the ones with the big problem. Do you want to comment on that and this whole area of risk and reward, I suppose, for the parties that we've got there?
I wonder, are they always the ones taking the main risk? It depends on what kind of mind frame they come into the mediation in. If they've come in with kind of with the belligerence attitude, or to kind of technically partake in the mediation, we are the ones taking the risk then in that situation, because you have people who aren't committed to the process, who aren't going to do their jobs of work that you give them. They're not going to do their Excel sheets. They're not going to do the stuff you need to progress matters. So, you know, I don't think it's always just client risk. I think everybody is taking a risk in the mediation process because we don't know how it's going to work out.
Yeah. So there's a certain uncertainty, and maybe I'll bring in Alona again. I mean, there was not only a structure here, but it was set up by media organisations.
Yeah.
Now, if this had been RTE or it had been the BBC or whatever, you know, Canal Plus, whatever, that people have a loyalty to certain organisations. These people volunteered to go and do something. There was a curiosity about them in the first place, but also they were linked to the media organisations when they expanded out within Germany that ran the thing. And generally in mediation, people have a connection that's coming in there. So again, maybe just chat about the importance of connections, Alona, and how useful that can be within mediation, or whether you think it had an impact in this particular case.
Yes, it does. But I think, you know, that's maybe the major difference between the video and what I did in the video or for the video and in real mediation, because, you know, I know the site, this is where the guy is the director of, and outside online, this is only a part of the site. And, you know, these are, it's an these are people who are educated. They're all probably, everybody who reads the site that's not the mainstream people. These are very well educated people. It's a very expensive journal as well. So not everybody can read this or have a thing on it. And so, and I think that's the difference to mediation, because when we take the people in, we don't know where people are coming from. You know, like we have people from, I had just lately people who were working at university, and there was a completely different thing, like just like the level of English, the level of equality, so the thing of equivalency. So the thing, yeah, there's my English coming in, and so you see how different the people are when you are really working in a mediator, and even in family mediation, you don't know what the clients will be. And so the connection, so they work with connection many more in a different way than we would. No? So it's like they're reading the newspaper, so you have only maybe 20% of Germany sitting there and putting, so they have more in common already than the people, even though, as I said already, and I'm just connecting what I said earlier, although they are from the same family. So, for example, my parents, same family, they have children together, so they have a lot of things in common, but they're not coming from the same background. So maybe one is coming from the north in Ireland, someone is coming from the south. Political, religious opinions, upbringing, where they brought up, where they live, where they lived with their parents, if the parents have been separated themselves already, yes or no, if they, yeah, all these things. So that's the risk, that's the thing, that's the beauty of mediation as well, that you just don't know who you're meeting, and to stay open-minded and really to work with them, and to have this voluntariness of them to see that they really want to, like, that they would like to try to find a solution for themselves. And I have to pick them up where they come from, so, and what they're willing to put on the table. I can ask, okay, what are the issues? And then they will tell me what they want to talk about. And then maybe I can prompt them and say, ask them, well, do you want to talk about this and this and this as well? But then if they don't want, then you have to accept it. And yeah, that's the, yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, that's the difference maybe to the people we met there in the video. They have had in the video, because they are still matched in a different way. Like they have maybe more in common because they are all these newspaper readers and they are all intellectual, and it's not the same what we meet in mediation. It's really real life what we meet in mediation. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I suppose there's no real power imbalance. So we're coming quite near the end. Bob, I'm into imagery, right? I'm into imagery. I like all that kind of stuff. I like sharing all those things. I put my little circle thing on the 6 stages of successful workplace mediation on Tinternet. But as we were chatting before this, we were chatting about the Venn diagram. And I think it was Alona mentioned that it was like two bubbles coming together. And in my head, I could see them coming like a Venn diagram, and agreeing bits in the middle, and not agreeing everything, but agreeing something in the middle that's in there. But do you want to say anything about because you'd come up with a Venn diagram independently. So anything about the way that might help mediators just get any idea? They seem to be miles apart. How are we getting them
Yeah,
together?
I'm very cautious because I suppose imagery. I love a bit of imagery as well, but the idea of Tinder for politics. I'm thinking, plenty of fish for mediation. Yeah, I don't know, grounding for disagreements. Yeah, we could go to dangerous places there. But going back to the imagery for a second, these Venn diagrams. So the bubble filters, that was seen as a negative, and indeed it is, because I believe he was saying, when you live in a bubble, then you will filter everything that comes in and out of that bubble. So that's quite difficult. We quite often in mediation look at the overlap, the Venn diagrams. Where do these two overlap? My only caution would be is I remember as a child playing with bubbles, huge big bubbles, and then you try and get two bubbles to knit together, and sometimes they would join together and make a bigger bubble. And actually, something came to me when I was watching this particular episode, and that was one of two things happened to me as a child when I managed to get those two bubbles together. Either the bigger bubble burst, and that wasn't always a good thing, or secondly, the bubble became too heavy and actually sank under its own weight. So we need to be careful if we're trying to create a one bubble for everyone to exist in, will it collapse under its own weight? I'll leave you with that thought.
Thank you very much. Any final thoughts from you, Avril, before we wrap up here?
No. Bob's imagery is very interesting there about the bubbles. Yeah.
We're not going to fall through the floor. Ilona,
Yeah. So, when I watch the video, I think what the most beautiful part of it is when that you said, and that gives me hope for mediation, and I think that's it's all about. When you bring two people together and they want to talk, and well, it's with the mediator or not, because I think we can all convince our clients that it's confidential, even though then we are sitting there. So that's one of the. But when you bring two people together, that there's a possibility that they change, and I absolutely believe in this. And that's their video and whatever they did there, that proves then, because two people came together, whatever they were thinking and if they're connected or not, but they came together to talk about something, and they went back and they were changed in a certain way. And that's what gives me hope for mediation.
Okay, very good. We're loving all that hope. We like to end on hope. So thank you very much to our panel, Avril Sheridan, Ilona Coop-Leek, and Bob Cree-Hay. We'll be back on I wrote it down somewhere, 28th of May at 1 o'clock. So it's a Wednesday instead of Tuesday, but still the usual time, lunchtime. And we'll be looking at the problem with being too nice at work. That's my problem. Are you too nice at work? Social psychologist Tessa Watt shares her research on how people attempt to mask anxiety with overly polite feedback, a practice that's more harmful than helpful, and gives 3 tips to swap generic unhelpful observations with clear, consistent feedback, even when you feel awkward. So that's going to be a lovely TED Talk next time. But thank you everyone for coming along. Thanks for your questions, and hope to see you. Hope to see you next month on the 28th at 1 o'clock. Stick it in your diary. Thanks, everyone.
Avril, I was hoping to keep Scott on there, but he's obviously disappeared.
Yeah, for some reason he has. I was very surprised. Yeah.
And we've lost a learner as well. So
Okay.
I'll just wait till everyone else has dropped out. So
Let's see who else is left there.
super.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah, yes.
I really enjoyed that. That was great.
Yeah,
So,
wasn't it? Yeah,
it was actually.
yeah.
And it was a very natural flow. And I think bringing Adrian in was a brilliant idea.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Because
that
you
was
have to
very
talk
interesting,
person.
that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
actually. So,
yeah.
Because it was an interesting subject, because there were lots of parallels, but also lots of
Differences. Yeah.
things that we shouldn't be using it for. So fantastic. Excellent.
Yeah.
Super. Right.
No, I thought it was great actually to bring in somebody from the audience. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, because it's something we've been trying to do, and sometimes it's worked and other times it hasn't. So